A few months ago, I covered a topic I came across in the forums that had been on my mind for quite a while, even before I made that original video. It was a recollection that one person had about a show they remembered seeing in the late 90s that no one else had heard about before and that most people didn't even believe was real. In the lost media community, it's not uncommon for old memories to come forward that are either inaccurate in their details, misremembering something that is completely different, or are just straight up hoaxes. And in every one of these examples, our topic in question, Jumper, definitely could have fallen into one of these categories. But despite all the odds being stacked against us, we came out on top. Jumper is now found, and concluded what had become an instant classic and example of a phenomenal lost media search. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, because the way in which this was found was almost not meant to be, and the story behind its unearthing is full of suspense. I honestly thought I was not going to end up with this tape, and according to the person who sold it to me, it might be the last one in existence. For those unaware or who might have heard about this search in passing before, this topic is about a kids show called Jumper, a direct-to-VHS tape series that starred a frog puppet and was recalled by Jupiter, the OP, from when they saw it in the late 1990s. Their cousin had a bunch of VHS tapes, and this production in particular was one that was watched over and over again. But in modern times, Jupiter could find no trace of Jumper on the internet. There was nothing about a frog puppet show, the lyrics that were remembered from the songs, or any mention of similar memories online. It was as if Jumper and this thread never actually existed. But the general backstory and details of this topic, coupled with the fact that it was believed to be a local production, seemed legit enough for people to look into, and they did. Early on, a little bit of light digging ensued, but there were no direct matches and only theories as to what became of this or why it was made in the first place. This was around the time I started looking into the topic more seriously, and decided that it had to be somewhere online, we just didn't know where to look. Because the bigger issue was, we didn't even know if it was called Jumper, or maybe this was a segment in a larger show with a different name. That's when I made my first video discussing all we had uncovered so far, and where our story picks up for this video. Right after I spent hours digging through kids' VHS tape listings online, trying to find cover art that would fit what Jumper was being described as visually. So after that video went up, and with the results that I presented in it, somehow the topic caught fire, and a new collective of users flocked to the thread and began throwing their own hats into the ring for what Jumper was or how we could find it. While a lot of these earlier pages didn't pull up any exact matches, the brainstorming session here was key in getting us as far as we did, and keeping the topic alive in general, which allowed the search to thrive. I love when a search can get so in-depth like this that you have pages and pages of discussion, and among this discussion came a few new ideas, like new areas to search in, including Google Groups threads and local VHS tape stores. Some users even came forward with new videos that they believed could have been Jumper, or were at least related to him, though all were debunked. A couple of hoaxes were even thrown into the mix too, which is crazy that Jumper gained so much popularity, people were trying to pull a fast one on us. Jupiter eventually made an updated list of what we knew about the show, what had been debunked, and where we could possibly take the search next to better increase our chances of coming across it. Admittedly, this was a little contagious, just looking around the internet for frog puppets, thinking you found the right one, and then posting about it in the thread. I came across a little closing logo for a company called Little Frog Productions from California, which is the area the Jumper tapes were spotted in. Some of the frog puppets that were shared were even from international content, which would have blown my mind if Jumper had actually been a localized show from somewhere else in the world. Searching for frog puppets specifically was such a vibe, but realistically, with how many frog puppets exist and with how common of a name Jumper is, it did not narrow down our search results at all, so my best efforts and other users did not give us any conclusive results around this time. But shortly after this period is when the search would find its first huge lead, and it was mostly a coincidence that this all lined up. Just the right set of circumstances to lead us in this direction. User Ferrets22 thought to use the copyright database and search for Jumper in it, to see if the name or name of the series had been officially registered, because if it had been, that would mean we'd have a name or company related to its production that we could then search for. And after looking into this, it brought up one result, a book called Jumper the Frog by author Peggy Collins. Now obviously, we knew Jumper was supposed to be a VHS tape series, but it seems strange that there existed one book in the database with this exact name. So we theorized Jumper the VHS was an adaptation of Jumper the book, and that contacting Peggy would be the key in getting an answer either way. Jupiter, the OP, Googled Jumper the Frog Peggy Collins with quotations around Jumper the Frog, and came up with different results than when they searched that without the quotes. And in these results was something that changed the entire direction of this search, something that was found kind of by accident. We suspect this result might have only come up because the name Peggy Collins was mentioned in this result, even though it was not directly related to the book, and Google just happened to index it because of the way Jupiter searched. But basically it pulled up a PDF of Billboard magazine from July 1988, and within one of its pages sat an ad for a video series. This was called Jumper the Frog and Singing Simon, with an image of a cartoon frog in the corner, and text that reads, "Jumper says, leap with me into the pond of profits." The location listed on the ad is San Jose, California, and it was made by a company called Centerpoint Distribution. Putting all of these elements together, it confirms without a doubt that this ad is our first ever piece of documentation that Jumper was real. Everything here matches up with what was previously known about the show, that he was a frog named Jumper, it was a kids VHS tape series, that Jupiter found the tapes specifically in San Jose, California, and that this was basically a marketing ad to get people to buy tapes of Jumper, with the intention of launching the series into a nationwide franchise, with t-shirts and toys apparently. While there was never any other mention or recollection of merchandise having been made for the show, we were confident this was absolutely the Jumper we were looking for. While the existence of this scan did confirm my theory that Jumper was online somewhere already in his presence, it didn't exactly help with us getting a tape of the show, since the company who produced it, Centerpoint Distribution, was long gone, along with their phone number and address, so we had no way to directly reach them and ask about this. But that's not to say this is the first time we've seen the name Centerpoint before. And if you remember back to my original video, I talked about a tape that I found when searching for kids show VHSs on eBay, specifically only in the San Jose area. This tape was called Eco You and Simon 2, which used a human character and a puppet, just like Jupiter had described Jumper to be. But at that time, I looked through a list of their other work on a database and found that none of it was kids show content, so I disregarded them as a lead. Jupiter 2 had said that there were no otters in Jumper, and that this production must have been something else, further debunking them from being related to Jumper at all. However, we were both very wrong about that, and could have come to this connection much sooner, if only either of us had actually watched more of Eco's content. While the Eco You and Simon 2 tape has now been archived in full online after the attention it got from this search, back months ago, there was only one short clip posted to YouTube, and it was sorta cut up and lacked any credits. I watched a little bit of it, but dismissed it after Jupiter checked and dismissed it as well. But would you believe that just a little further into this clip, do Eco and Simon start rapping about food? This is the famous food rap song that Jupiter recalled being in Jumper, further cementing the connection between these two productions. The character of Simon is also found on both productions, and to wrap everything up in a bow, Jupiter typed in Centerpoint Distribution, and indeed, Eco came up on their end too. Jumper and Eco were made by the same production company, and this was as solid as could be at this point. But even with this newfound information that Jumper and Eco were connected, it didn't lead to any immediate result in getting a tape. In fact, that's sort of where the direction of the search shifted. Not even just trying to get a tape, but trying to find any photos of a tape that might have been posted online at one point. We still didn't know what the Jumper puppet looked like, or how many tapes in this alleged nationwide series were made, so people tried looking on the Wayback Machine for listings on old VHS tape websites, and even checking to see if Centerpoint had made a website itself back then. But it didn't seem like they did. Once the Eco tape was ripped by Flaming Moe's VHS archives, a cast list was also compiled, and a sub-search began to try and locate any of the former crew members, hoping that they might have worked on Jumper 2, or could at least provide information about it. Following all these crazy finds, I had to help out in some way and try to think of how I could find a Jumper tape. I went on another crazy search frenzy, looking for other old tapes being sold from Centerpoint Distribution, searching for Singing Simon from San Jose, and even looking through old listings that had already sold for Centerpoint tapes. But I didn't find anything else that I hadn't seen in the earlier months. I even tried using the Eco box as a basis to my search, as there had been reviews of the tape on the back of the packaging, so I was thinking maybe some of these people who watched Eco also watched Jumper too, and we could find specific reviews or mentions of that review from a larger body of work. But I couldn't even find these specific publications that were cited on the Eco box. So once again, it felt like I and everyone else were at a dead end with trying to find any new content posted online that was connected to this company or these series. But then I had one final idea simply because it seemed easy enough to do. While we were all searching around the internet for any other mentions of Jumper or Centerpoint Distribution, I remembered that we actually had already found content readily available from them, and that was the original eBay listing for Eco U and Simon 2. So right here we have an active piece of evidence to look at. But it wasn't just the fact that this listing existed that caught my interest, and instead it was given the fact that the tapes were sealed, there was more than one in stock, and the seller was located in San Jose. It led me to believe that this may have been a case of these tapes, either from Centerpoint themselves or a distributor, that never sold its unused stock, which means it was also possible this seller was in possession of Jumper tapes and either never sold them or never even listed them on eBay. I almost wasn't going to send them a message about this because it just seemed too good to be true, but I did anyway because it was just easy enough to do. And this is when everything changed, and my madness ensued in trying to get my hands on a Jumper tape. Considering most of the other items the seller had up for sale, I really didn't think I'd get a response at all when asking if they had a Jumper tape. But to my surprise, it was the complete opposite. After asking specifically for Jumper the Frog and Singing Simon, they told me they were one of the producers of the tape and might have one in storage. And also that they were curious how I even knew about Jumper at all, since they said not many people did. I briefly explained that people had heard about the show in passing, but couldn't find it online, and even showed them the billboard ad. I even asked in this same message about the toys and t-shirts that are mentioned there, and then things got a little confusing. I think the seller, for some reason, had thought I moved the discussion back to Eco and mentioned that there wasn't anything made, with the exception of some promo items that were given out at its premiere, which confused me in the first place as I had no idea Eco was screened anywhere at all. There were a few typos and cut off sentences in the replies, so I decided to circle back to Jumper and just get to the point, and they confirmed they would look for the tape after they took care of some personal stuff. I said okay and waited, and figured they would reach out when they found the copy. But close to 3 weeks had gone by, and they never said anything back, so I figured they just didn't have it and didn't want to tell me they couldn't find it. But then, out of nowhere, I got a message one day of them stating they found the tape. I was so hype. I thought we were going to instantly get to see Jumper, solve the mystery, it was going to be great, I was going to post about it everywhere, until there were no pictures attached to the message, and that they would only recontact me in another week or so to conduct the sale. I was fine with waiting to get the tape, but I really wanted to see a picture of it, and if they found it, they must have it nearby. Not to mention, I wanted to check the condition of the tape before I bought it, just in case there was no chance it was going to work or anything. But strangely, this was also delayed, as they didn't send me a photo right away and said it would take another week or so. So I said okay and waited once more, around 2 more weeks, just to get the photo of the tape. And then, after they said they sent the photo, I saw nothing. They sent me a message with a description as if they had sent the photo, but nothing showed up. I asked for it again, and they said they sent it again, but once again, I saw nothing. At first, I started to panic, thinking this was some kind of elaborate troll that the seller had constructed, because they did say to me that others had asked about a Jumper tape as well, so maybe they were misleading me intentionally. But then I realized that seemed pretty unrealistic, and most likely it was probably a technical issue with eBay's messaging system, because it can be pretty bad sometimes. It'll censor or block messages if it thinks you're trying to make an outside transaction, which has happened to me before. So I told them I think the photos are being blocked. They acknowledged this, and then said, we can just skip the pictures and just make the listing with the tape, and when it goes live, hope I can grab it while it's up. Considering the rarity of the tape, even if there had been a problem with its condition, I probably still would have bought it anyway and hoped for the best. So we coordinated a time to be online, and I basically said, okay, see you then. Now at this point, my biggest fear was that someone unaware of the search would stumble upon that listing before me, buy it, and then we'd let our only chance at seeing Jumper slip away. So you better believe I camped right at my computer on that day, on that hour, and waited for the clock to strike at the meetup time. And then, nothing. I kept checking my inbox waiting for them to send me a link, but it just never came. I waited for a half an hour before I figured they just forgot. Or who knows, maybe this actually was a troll, because at that point I still hadn't seen the tape. And then I was just about to close out of eBay, before thinking, let me check their current listings, in the event that maybe it had been listed without them notifying me. And yep, that's what happened. They had made a listing for the tape without messaging me saying it was actually up. The listing itself was even all decked out like a proper listing would be, when honestly I thought they were just going to throw something up quickly because they knew I would be the only person seeking it out to buy. Though after the fact they did inform me that there was a technical issue that prevented them from posting it on time, so that explains the delay. But regardless, I am really thankful to the seller for working with me so closely to ensure I was able to get the tape, so I really appreciate that. And then finally got to see what Jumper looked like on that tape cover. Kinda. Unfortunately, the seller had obscured the front of Jumper's cover, but from what we could see in the listing, neither the front or back had any images of the puppet itself, or what the show even looked like. However, the 2D image of Jumper used was the same one from the Billboard magazine ad, and the back text confirmed the songs Jupiter was remembering from being on the tape. So the mystery of the cover continued for even longer, until the package finally arrived. I was so excited thinking that the puppet might accompany the drawn artwork on the other side. Someone in one of my live streams even suggested maybe the seller intentionally hid it to keep it a surprise. That would have been a really fun reveal, but after unboxing, I discovered it was drawn artwork of Singing Simon. Even the label on the tape did not have the puppet on it, and I was just like, oh, it's been 2 months since I first got confirmation of this tape existing. I just want to see the gosh dang puppet. The whole product, however, was in remarkable condition, with the exception of the glue on the label creating some dark coloring, but everything else looked perfect. I was very confident this was going to play. So with my newly purchased capture equipment in hand and connected working VHS player, I put the tape in and for the first time in 30 years, got to experience what on earth Jumper and Singing Simon was all about. And wow, was it quite an experience indeed.
Do you hear something? Yeah.
The first thing I noticed was just how wild Jumper actually looked. He was like a bulky, big-eyed puppet that honestly didn't resemble a frog as much as the drawing or even other frog puppets that were suggested did. Upon this first glimpse, it almost felt like he could have been someone's childhood trauma, with the way that he moved and how deep his voice was. But then as the show played on more, he seemed to fit in with Simon much better. Actually, it got to a point where I didn't even enjoy the individual Simon segments when Jumper wasn't there, which circles back to Jupiter's original recollection. As far as I could tell while watching this, and you can too, as I uploaded it to the Internet Archive, every memory and segment that Jupiter recalled was in here. The food rap, which was reused in Eco, the Monsters Are Make-Believe song, and even the comment about a belly button, though it wasn't actually in relation to Jumper, and instead it was a detail he suggested his make-believe monster to have. So that was a little bit of misremembering on Jupiter's part.
His belly button.
His belly button? Why, how could I have forgotten his belly button? You can't have a monster without a belly button. There's just no way.
And then when the tape came to its conclusion, they sang a song that was actually really depressing, given the context of what happened to this series. The song was about this being the end of Jumper's time with the viewers, but that they'd see them again next time and to not be sad about it. And as we know now, there was no next time. Jumper would fall into obscurity and become a forgotten relic to the sands of time. But perhaps we're looking at this in the wrong way. Actually, it acts as a beautiful metaphor for how he gained a second life within the lost media community, and how more people than ever before now care about this topic because they followed it. It may have taken almost 40 years, but this is Jumper's next time. We made it. This spiritual revival concluded in a blaze of glory with a sick guitar solo at the end. Jumper shreds it, and that was my favorite scene of the whole video. And now here we are. Well, yes, the main mystery of Jumper is solved, and this tape specifically seems to be the one Jupiter was remembering, that's not actually where the whole mystery ends. We still don't know for certain if any other Jumper content was made. The tape itself has a number 1 on it, which is not handwritten and is printed, meaning that even when this was made, they were anticipating making more episodes. Not to mention, while I was doing all of this back and forth with the seller of the tape, the thread in the forums was still active on its own, making additional contacts from people who worked at Centerpoint. User LostFrog2024 even said that some of these crew members were reunited in a group chat and were talking again after all these years, which was a really heartfelt bonus. One of these crew members also claimed to have a storage unit with Centerpoint content in it, where it's believed more Jumper tapes reside. Maybe there's a second episode in there that was never released, or at least pieces of it that were produced, because I also heard from someone on Twitter that was helping with the search that a second episode of Eco Audio was stated to have been recorded but never put to visuals. We also don't know where either the Jumper or Eco puppets are, which would be a phenomenal bonus to the search, as lost physical items are always fun to look for. And now that we have all these people on our contact list, it might be possible. I would love to see the actual puppets and cover their reappearance in a future video, so I really hope we can make that happen. In conclusion, we've solved the main mystery of Jumper, what it is, where it came from, and why it became so obscure. From what the community has gathered, Jumper was basically the pilot to better kids show productions Centerpoint wanted to make, which could be the reason why Eco exists at all. Jumper is dated 1988, whereas Eco is 1990, so even if more Jumper content exists, there can't be too much more of it. This search has been so fun to be a part of, and I hope it can continue in the future as we uncover more secrets from the Jumper universe. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to check out some of my other Lost Media videos. Thanks for watching, and until next time, Finn.